Welcome to a special edition of the Heron Outlet, a rapid reaction. She is Alex Winley. He is Austin Robillard. I am Ian Hess. Guys, let's just jump right into it. We just finished the press conference with owner Jorge Mas and David Beckham as they get ready for tomorrow's home opener, the start of the third season for Inter Miami as they take on the Chicago Fire at Drive Pink Stadium. Some interesting takeaways. We'll just go with like opening reactions. What I saw was a very consistent right off the bat. The use of the word fight was very prevalent throughout this entire press conference. The energy, the articulation that we want to be a tough team. You might beat us, but you're going to have to earn it. And like that idea that they want to be sort of that level of energy, that level of excitement, talking about the first time that they've gotten a full preseason and the success that they've had, but that real impact that they want to fight. Alex, I'll start with you. What was your biggest takeaway from what you just heard?
That this team is going to be hard to beat. I think listening to Moss Moss mainly, he seemed sort of humbled. These first 2 years haven't gone the best, but I feel as if, Moss was speaking from a place where he's, learned a lot and expects to kind of temper his expectations. Of course, they want to win, and they said it outright that they want to win, but this team is in a difficult spot, but at the same time, they still want them to fight like they're fighting for, World Cup or a Champions League or whatnot. So I think it shows in the roster build. They brought in a lot of tough guys and got rid of players that didn't fit what they wanted to do really. And I don't want to call it shade, but they very the insinuation was look at all the players they got rid of. Clearly they got rid of them specifically for that reason. There was no fight, there was no grit to them. So this team is going to look very different. Even the ownership, they've gotten behind them, so it's going to be really intriguing how that looks throughout how that holds up throughout the season.
Austin, I want to touch on Alex's point there. There was a quote from David Beckham that said, "You expect players to come in and work for this club, work for this jersey." We had cases last year, too many in my opinion, where we didn't have that. What does that tell you?
Tells you that all the moves they made were probably the right moves. I mean, it's as simple as that. That's exactly the quote that I was going to bring up. I have it listed right here on my phone. So Ian, you beat me to it. But yeah, that was my like definite biggest takeaway is that they understood that the team that they had last year was not the team that should have been representing Inter Miami. He also even noted that, that Phil Neville came into this second season of Inter Miami's history without his own team. He noted that as well, and that also plays a part in it. And now that they've had one of the biggest, if not the biggest, roster turnover in MLS history, it's now, this is the team that you have to have. This is the team that you're going to live and die by. Phil Neville said that yesterday, and hopefully that they brought in the players that are going to fight for the jersey, are going to fight for the badge, are going to work hard on the field. And I'll keep saying fight as much as they were saying fight, because that was the emphasis. Like last year, the emphasis was on the youth academy and the young players and bringing them up. This year, this press conference is all about fight. And I like that. I think that that's something that they definitely needed to bring up and use. And hopefully that turns out throughout the season, comes into fruition, because if it doesn't, it's going to be another long year.
Austin, I wanted to talk to you about that because David Beckham had said that his main priority was the youth academy, that he wants to see, young players from the South Florida community rise up through the ranks. He's been a little frustrated with visa processes and rules and things like that. He had alluded to. Jorge Mas had talked about this idea that very early on, he thought that there were the big name players. He had mentioned that they've met with some of the biggest stars in the world, and they realized that a roster build is more depth based and needing to have some of those players, and talked about how if MLS wasn't a salary capped league, he'd be willing to spend what it took. Now, he is perhaps wealthier than many owners in the league, but that ambition, that desire, sort of alludes to behind closed doors. He's pushing to raise the salary cap. He's pushing to, make things possible, because he made it clear if this was Europe, if this was South America, he would be willing to gobble up all these top name players. I found that very interesting in his comments today, that he was talking about how he's learning how to construct within the confines of MLS rules and regulations.
Yeah, and I think there was one specific quote, I can't remember what it was, but he talked about what it takes to win an MLS championship. And he discussed that it's, young players, the youth and athleticism, but also that veteran presence that you need on the field and behind the closed doors to be the teachers of that. And it's all going to take a mixture, and that's what they're trying to build, because that's kind of what they have to build, whether it's because they have to win MLS championships and because of the roster rules, right? And you talk about the grit, the drive, the passion, the culture within the club. I think that you've seen that with some of the young players as well. You look at the way Noah Allen has played, especially in the Carolina Challenge Cup. You look at the way Edison Escona has gotten some minutes. I think we saw it firsthand with DC United. Those are players you want as they grow up to play for your club, because they have that South Florida grind and grittiness on the field. If this wasn't a salary cap league, I'm totally shifting my point here. If this wasn't a salary cap league, I have no doubt in my mind that Jorge Mas is going to spend the money. And that he has gone on and spent the money. That's why Matuidi was here. That's why Pizarro was here. That's why Higuain was here. 3 TPs right off the bat. I guess it was halfway through the season, but that probably wasn't even up to them. But as soon as they could. And now they've kind of taken a little shift behind that because of the way it didn't work out the first 2 years. You put Matuidi to waivers, get him off the roster. Pizarro's gone. You leave Higuain, the guy who's probably performed the best of those three, and then you bring in these other products from all around the world. I think we were talking about off air, the Swedes, the Brazilians, just all over the place, the Finnish as well. And then you have the youth academy coming up through the ranks, and David Beckham, yes, he did express his I guess frustrations with the league to try and get these players to come up, because not only is it going to make him prouder to have the young players come up, but it's also going to be in the players' best interest, the league's best interest, and the country that they're playing in's best interest, as in the United States Soccer Federation. It's going to be good for them, and they need to keep on working on that. That's what's telling me that Jorge Mas and David Beckham are pushing behind the scenes to get some things changed, whether it's salary cap or whether it's like visa processes and getting young players up. They're probably working hard behind the scenes to make those things happen.
Well, I think that now I am going to sort of rumor mill this with a preface on this, but I think that they are very clearly and specifically talking about Harvey Neville. I think that and Noah Allen to a certain extent, but right. I think that the Harvey Neville thing is annoying them. They would like to get him in, and it's been a difficult process to get.
Well, and think about last year too. Phil Neville was getting really annoyed with the league when it came to the roster, the Mabiga, right? And they had to, send certain specific documents to show that they didn't have the 15 players or whatever the number was, and they were getting grilled about it because of the past stuff. And it totally understandable, fine, but it shouldn't be that hard. It's not. It's MLS, right? And we have to lower expectations a little bit, and it's unfortunate. But I do hope that they both these owners push behind the scenes, because I think that there is a much needed change in American soccer. And I think we can all agree on that. And it's getting to the point where it is getting better every year by year. And we talked about it on the pod with MLS Next Pro. We like what they're doing, being able to shift players up and down. But there's still more work to be done. And if Jorge Mas and David Beckham could be at the forefront of that, it'd make me proud as an Inter Miami person.
Alex, I wanted to ask you about Miami Freedom Park, and Austin, I'll let you get in on it too in the back end. Specifically, Jorge talking about it with the quote, "promises made, promises kept," which I found really a line that goes into the political spectrum, into the political theater of it all. And this has been a very political process. He even mentions the upcoming March 9th city council meeting where they will vote on it, and where they're trying to get the commissioners to approve the project. This is clearly something that he's not giving up. We talk about fight. He's not giving up the fight on this. And I was a little I don't know if like taken aback is the right word, but a little surprised at how much this still matters to him. He still wants this project, even in its darkest hours, and how many times we've gone through different sites and different things. He still believes in this project, and what you took away from what he said about that.
Yeah, I think it shows that you just got to trust the process. This has been such a long-winded saga that, the fact that it could possibly be coming to an end soon is a testament to how hard Moss has been working on this. If this gets done, it'll arguably be one of the coolest MLS stadiums, in my sort of biased opinion. But that point about promises made and promises being kept, I think it was like a Marlins Park sort of shade, because how disastrous that deal was, and how it honestly, the trickle effect it has affected Inter Miami, because of that they're not able to negotiate this. And I don't know, like, it's just a lot of red tape basically, with that Marlins Freedom Park, that Marlins Park deal, which is hindering Miami Freedom Park from getting anywhere because people's distrust of what happened there. So I think with Miami Freedom Park, they've definitely done their due diligence, and definitely don't want to make that mistake again. This park will be privately financed, and there's still a lot of work to be done, because the arsenic levels and the fact that it's by an airport, they still gotta talk about the lights and the traffic and whatnot. So it still will take a lot of work, but yeah, the fact that they're able to have a date and where they can set this in front of the commissioners is absolutely huge. And hopefully maybe it'll get passed, but it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, I'm probably the one person not to ask about Miami Freedom Park, because I live in Broward County, and I know that the Broward County fans are like a little bit happy that it's here for a little bit longer. But however, I know that it's in the best interest of the club to have that project happen, to make it into reality. Jorge Boss is an owner that we know is ambitious, that we know wants to fight and get everything right for this club. He's expressed that on multiple occasions. He's shown it on multiple occasions. And I have no doubt in my mind that eventually this will get done. Maybe the process can take a little longer, but having the March 9th city council date, I think is really good. I hope that it's telling and we get some information out of that so we can find out really what's going on. But I do want to just have my expectations managed here, because I don't want to keep on feeding into the hope that it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Now, if it wasn't for COVID, I think that maybe this is the year 3. This is the year they wanted to have Miami Freedom Park open and ready to go for the MLS team. But obviously circumstances that you can't change. They're exceptional circumstances. I'm just hoping that whatever is in the best interest of this club can happen. It should happen. It probably will happen because of the ambitious owners. And if Miami Freedom Park is to be built, I think they'll be better for it.
I do want to touch on what a point you just made, that what struck me was how much, I mean, COVID has obviously affected all of our lives, but they genuinely feel like this would have gone smoother, that this wouldn't have been as chaotic and as from the stadium to even a roster build, to getting visas for players, to getting coaches in, to academy buildups, to facilities, to hear how much the pandemic really did affect them. They feel like, maybe that's an excuse to a certain extent, but it is a fair excuse to a certain extent.
I would say yes, it is somewhat of a fair excuse, and their circumstances may be different than any other club in the world. However, I look at another club in Nashville who came in at the same time as them, and yes,
but different culture, different style. They had the facility, they had the stadium already there, that they were allowed to go into the Titan Stadium.
Right,
they didn't have to deal with all of that stuff.
Good point. Yeah, Miami, the league forced Miami to get a stadium deal in place, where there's a lot of these other clubs that they're still playing in football stadiums, or they don't have their own soccer specific stadium before they got into the league. And
but I think also, Alex, that logistically hurts you, because you need a facility to be able, I mean, I remember when they were in some office building in like near Westchester, trying to figure things out, and trying to do pop-up events at Adrian Arsh that had no idea what they were doing. So the fact that like logistically figuring all of this out, you could hear in their voice, they might not say it explicitly, but you could hear in their voice how this really impacted what they were doing, Austin.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the main difference between, I guess, Nashville and Inter Miami, well, there's a lot of differences, but the main one with the whole stadium thing and coming into the league, because as an expansion side, you have to have a stadium deal in place, blah, blah, blah. We can get into the logistics, but we don't have to. The thing is, Nissan Stadium is right there in the heart of downtown Nashville. And that facility was open to having the soccer club play their games there. And, good on Nashville for getting that done in place. However, Inter Miami's owners were not going to settle to go play in Hard Rock or go play at anywhere else that wasn't going to be theirs. The ambition was a lot higher than, I guess, most expansion clubs coming into the league within the last 10 years. And that's kind of the key difference. And the fact that they fought for it the way they did, the fact that they went and built a facility in Fort Lauderdale just because they wanted to get it done. And by the way, one of the best facilities in MLS, if you're talking about a training ground, however, it's unbelievable what they've done there compared to wherever everybody else trains. It's just has to do with their ambition. I'm not going to say they shot themselves in the foot because they want to do things the right way and the best way, and that's the way you should always do things. However, it did set back the process a little bit. However, I think they're doing it the right way because there's no other way to do it if you have these ambitions.
I want to close with two quick hits for you guys. Beckham was asked about Phil and having patience with him. There was chatter about, not living up to what the hype was. Obviously, with the history that Phil has with Beckham, that there is always that sort of looming. He was asked about it. He said, "We need stability within our club. With stability brings success." Now, Inter Miami is a lot of things. Stability has not been defined by one of them. Diego Alonso the first year, Phil the second year, the historic roster turnover this year, Chris coming in for Paul McDonough. There has been a lot of moving parts in this process to get here. So I guess my question to you, to Austin, would be the idea of extending that leash of Phil not really being on the hot seat at all right now, and just sort of, listen, he's now got his guys in. Let's see how this style of play is going to go. Let's see how this plays out. And that comfortability of like when you get a new recliner and the first couple of times it's a little uncomfortable to sit in the chair. And then over time, it sort of conforms to your body. I sort of got that sensibility from it, that it's sort of, now we get to lean back just a little bit more and let's just see how this goes.
Yeah, that was it. That was a very interesting part of the conference for me. This is going to sound crazy, but as a Manchester United fan, I think you guys heard the reference too. In all of his time at Manchester United, he didn't directly say it, but between his time at Manchester United, it was only Sir Alex Ferguson, and between his time at Real Madrid, it was, I think he said, 5 different coaches, and that is quite the difference. And that's where he said he realized and learned that stability is important. Not to say Manchester United is a greater club than Real Madrid, but it is. I'll just say this. I think David Beckham wants to try and have that kind of model in which they have a guy at the helm, or 2 guys at the helm, if we're going to talk about Chris Henderson and Phil Neville, that want to be here for a long time and build the project the way that they want to build it so that they can be successful. And it all comes down to having the right team, having the right players. We spoke about it earlier. Phil Neville now has his roster of players. And it's going to be, hopefully for them, a world of difference. It's going to be a world of difference. But it's funny to hear David Beckham talk about that, the stability. Because even in his career, he wasn't always stable. He was moving from club to club, time to time, after long periods, however. But it was interesting to hear that from him, and made me, smile a little bit as a Man United fan as he talks about Sir Alex. But yeah, I'm hoping that he can bring something like that with Inter Miami. Obviously, that's a large reach, but even, we talked about it. Phil Neville leaving at the end of the season just was not realistic or feasible. Having to go from manager in year 1 to a new manager in year 2 to a new manager in year 3, definitely not stable, and it wasn't going to be successful. It was never going to be that way. If you can get a guy in here for the first time ever who has a full preseason with players that he wants, that's something that this club has not seen before. And hopefully that it's, we're hoping that it turns into a better product on the field. That's what the club's hoping. That's what the owners are hoping. And that's what everybody else is hoping.
And Alex, they mentioned how this was the first time that this club, we talked about it on the pod this week, but they mentioned this is the first time this club has had a full preseason. They haven't had that yet. And winning their first trophy, having all of that, that can pay dividend. I mean, that is valuable. There is a lot of stock in that.
Yeah, and I think people underestimate how important that is. Last season, you saw how poor it could get without proper preparation. And, from that press conference, Moss, Beckham, and even Phil Neville yesterday, they feel much more sure of themselves and really relaxed about this season. I don't know if you guys felt it, but that comes from proper preparation. If you're prepared, you're never anxious or concerned about anything because you did your due diligence and what you're supposed to do. So, looking at this preseason and this offseason, they specifically brought in players who wanted to fight for the shirt, and that's why you saw a lot of your, a lot of fan favorite players left the club because simply they just didn't fight hard enough, and it's a tough pill to swallow for some of some fans and writers and whatnot, but it's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. And with the squad, even watching them in preseason, there's a lot more fight, there's a lot more hunger in them. I don't know if last year's Inter Miami would be able to win a tournament like the Carolina Challenge Cup. So just seeing it all come together and seeing the ownership get behind the club and Neville specifically. I know Neville's gotten a lot of slack, and the nepotism shouts, but genuinely, I think Phil Neville was hired specifically because David Beckham wants to emulate what the class of '92 did in terms of bringing up the youth players, having that one or two figureheads in Phil Neville and Chris Henderson. They want that stability. They want that sort of underlying that foundational culture that's that word again, culture. They want that culture to be foundational. So in 10 years time, we can see, back in 2022, they did this. So, the team in 2020 and 2030, in the far future, they laid the foundations for that future team to be successful. So it's a first step in many, but this off season was probably one of the more important off seasons in club history.
You mentioned work ethic, and so it's only fitting that we end where we started with that fight. And the last question that was posed to Jorge Mas and David Beckham concerned Gonzalo Higuain and his work ethic, his work rate. Beckham had said, when our fans see Gonzalo play like he can play and work like he can work, everyone reacts to that. And I love that sort of that idea that when Gonzalo's on, everybody, you can feel it and everybody reacts to it. How do we feel about what his role is moving forward? I had thought about the contract of DeAndre Yedlin when he was talking about it, because that is a long extended contract. And so the idea that this is a long-term project, that maybe there's a passing of the torch, didn't really feel like it was necessarily that. It felt like, no, Gonzalo, like, he's going to run this club. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I was happy to hear David Beckham talk about Gonzalo Higuain. I didn't actually expect that question to be asked, but it was. And I think that, a lot of it was telling. And I think that he expects kind of what I not remember. Alex, excuse me if I'm wrong. I don't remember who you put in your MVP last night in our podcast. I don't know if it was Gonzalo Higuain, but I know mine was Gonzalo Higuain. Andres was Gonzalo Higuain, and those expectations are there for him from the owners, from the coaches, from Chris Henderson. Gonzalo Higuain has to be the MVP of this team this year. He's got to fight and win. He's got to score goals if he wants to stay better friends with David Beckham, as he noted and laughed about. And they are putting pressure on him to be the player that he is. And, there were times last year and the year before where it was on and it was off. It was on and it was off. But David Beckham, when talking about the fans reacting to how he can play, when he does play the way he can, fans react. And he said that Gonzalo Higuain has learned that, and it's going to motivate him. If Gonzalo Higuain can be the player that we know Gonzalo Higuain to be, this team could be very successful. And I think that they're moving in, for this season anyway, to move in the direction to use him as a core piece on and off the field is a move in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. I think Gonzalo is going to need to step up. You saw him during the Challenge Cup get that, sort of an integral part of Miami winning. He got that assist from, he assisted Ariel last year in that goal, and you saw him drop a bit deeper. And tactically, we don't have time to get into that. But if Inter Miami won a good season, Gonzalo needs to be in good form. And from everything that we've seen and read from preseason, he looks really fit and mentally in a good place, emotionally in a good place. So that really bodes well for Inter Miami in 2022.
Definitely a very interesting press conference. He is Austin Robillard. She is Alex Winley. We will see you at Drive Pink Stadium tomorrow night, 6:08 p.m. and 32 seconds until kickoff for Inter Miami against the Chicago Fire, and a very exciting season ahead here on the Heron Outlet. For our producer Andres, I'm Ian Hest, and we will see you back here for the normal pod and all of our content. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, all those wonderful things. We have so much coming this season. We're excited to have you with us here on the Heron Outlet.